Hello! So we're already nearly a month into 2019 and I've already started up picking up games that are fresh out of development. I wanted to see 2018 off by talking about the games that stood out to me the most last year, and so I'm here to do just that. In case you weren't here for the last year, Bill, Kinross and myself were all making our own individual videos about the games that stuck out to us this year. And at some point in the near future we'll be gathering together to collectively discuss our picks with one another. It's safe to say that I've missed a lot of huge games from last year. There were a lot that I didn't have time to play and a lot that I didn't get time to finish and exercise from my backlog, so my list in particular might be missing a few of the big hits from last year, and I hope you can forgive me for that. I have two rules for myself that Bill and Kinross may not have for their videos, and that is that I won't be discussing ports. Remasters are fair game, but I can't bring myself to talk about ports of games when nothing particularly special has been done to them, aside from making them more accessible on newer platforms. So that means no Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, no Captain Toad, and no Shenmue over on this list. The other weird rule that's somehow very relevant to last year is that I won't be talking about games that aren't technically done. So while I do desperately want to talk about Deltarune, and while I had every expectation of talking about The Walking Dead the final season, I can't talk about them without really knowing how they actually end. They are quite good though, and I'm loving Life is Strange 2 as well. With that, I want to talk to you about my top 10-ish games of 2018. Now, I know you're looking at the combination of Starlink Battle for Atlas and Octopath Traveler and frowning as you try to figure out why they're both in the same spot as if they share some kind of similarity. The simple reason that these two are slotted into the same place though is because I'm not even close to beating either of them. So while I'm enjoying both of them, I'm also not sure which one I'd enjoy more in terms of the long game. Neither, probably, otherwise I probably would have beaten them by now. Anyway, Starlink Battle for Atlas was barely on my radar until E3 of this year, where they announced the Switch exclusive content and it was all about Star Fox. And there was this neat R-Wing toy, and then suddenly I absolutely had to have it. Starlink is a space exploration action-adventure toys-to-life game from Ubisoft, available on everything but with special content and figures exclusive to the Switch. I do enjoy the core of this game a lot, and I think the toys-to-life mechanics are way better than they have any right to be. And I think the fact that this game has crashed in price over the last few months should be a great incentive to give it a try if you are worried about the expensive starter set. The problem I've run into is that it feels longer than it really has any right to be, and a lot of it is a bit repetitive. But the basis of it is good fun and something I'm looking forward to beating in the next year. And in the same place is Octopath Traveler, the annoyingly spelt game for the English among us. Octopath Traveler is a HD, 2D, turn-based JRPG that came out in July, only for no one to really be able to get a copy of the dang thing because it sold far better than anyone expected. This game is absolutely gorgeous, with a rather fun core to its gameplay. Although I'm pretty over random encounters, they never felt like too much of a chore because of the interesting classes and mechanics that come along with the members of your party. So while you have the usual suspects like the thief and the cleric and the man with the big sword, you also get the chance to use more unique characters, like an apothecary who crafts potions mid-battle to heal the other party members, or the dancer who can seduce NPCs into battling on her behalf. There are so many interesting parts to this game, and I'm desperate to try and find some time to sit down and finish the thing. And I'm sure that if I was confident that it remained this fun throughout the entire game, it would be much higher on my list. But for now, it goes into the list of games that I think are worth checking out, especially if you have a hankering for an interesting, beautifully designed JRPG. Oh man, it's been a while since I've enjoyed a new Mario Party game, and I have to admit, I'm really surprised by how much I've enjoyed playing this one. Super Mario Party takes us back a few games and gives us proper boards that we move around independently. That's all I really needed from a Mario Party game, but it helps that there are a decent amount of modes to play around in for a little bit of variety for those times when you don't want to pay attention to a proper board. I also like the minigames a lot in this game, which is probably why I've been enjoying it so much. There are very few times when playing this game that I actively groan because the game's decided that we have to play the bad minigame, and I quite like that. All in all, this isn't a good single-player experience, because it's Mario Party. The clue is sort of in the title. However, I think this is one of the more fun multiplayer games to come out on the Switch in the last year. I don't think I ever expected to place an Overcooked game on my Game of the Year list, however I cannot think of a game that I've laughed playing as much as I have this one. Overcooked 2 is by far the best multiplayer experience I got to have on the Switch this year, and it all comes down to them adding online multiplayer. There really isn't a lot more I can say about Overcooked 2 because it's like the first one with a few added features, but it's still great fun at the core, and something to absolutely look into if you're after a multiplayer game to fall out with your friends over. Shadow of the Colossus is a game that I've wanted to play for years and years, but it was one of those things that I just never quite got around to. So of course when the remaster was announced I was absolutely thrilled and bought it as soon as I could. I loved about 90% of this game, with the other 10% being frustration at the camera or the final Colossus. But the 90% of this game that I loved was so tight and unique that I can kind of forgive it for the other stuff. This game made me feel like I was incredible. Whether or not I was figuring out how I was supposed to mount a Colossus to get to its weak spot, or if I was desperately clinging to the back of a huge bird as it tore through the air, this game made me feel like I was on such an adventure, however morally questionable the purpose of it was. There isn't really a lot I can say about this game that hasn't been said before, but I'm genuinely glad that I finally got the opportunity to play it this year, and it really was such a great experience, with a bit of a sour ending because the last Colossus kinda sucks. E3 brought a lot of surprises, but one of my favourites was the sudden announcement of the awesome adventures of Captain Spirit, and the best part was that we only had to wait a couple of weeks before we were treated to what would be the best promo that Life is Strange 2 could have gotten. And it was completely free! The awesome adventures of Captain Spirit takes place on a lazy Saturday in the lead up to Christmas as you follow the day of Chris Erickson. Chris is just an ordinary 9-year-old boy who dreams of becoming a superhero and going on adventures to defeat his nemesis and bring peace to the world. The awesome adventures of Captain Spirit brings you on a journey through Chris's imagination as he ticks off his to-do list, explores his own home looking to piece together his perfect superhero outfit, and defeats the menacing Water Eater. The funny thing is, I don't really hear a ton of people talking about this game outside of the superfans of Life is Strange and Don't Nod. Maybe it was something that people missed and it's not something that I want to talk too much about, as the most important thing going into a game like this is making the choices that you want to make and interacting with people the way that you deem fit. So I don't want to say too much in fear of spoiling this nice little slice of a December Saturday. It's free, it takes about 2 hours, the number you want to remember is 4298-3294, and just go and form your own opinions. It's either the kind of game that's for you or it's not, and it just so happens that I absolutely loved this game. Return of the Obra Dinn is brilliant. I don't know what else to say about it because I'm terrified of giving away too much of a hint for those of you who have yet to play it. Return of the Obra Dinn takes place on a ship called the Obra Dinn that has seen far too much tragedy. You are the one tasked with figuring out exactly what happened on the ship, armed only with a notebook with over 100 blank pages and a pocket watch called the Memento Mortem. This pocket watch allows you to go back and see the moment that a person dies, and with that you have to identify all of the passengers and crew aboard the ship and figure out their fate. This game is not easy. It's very challenging and has the ability to make you feel like an idiot for what feels like hours before you have that one breakthrough moment that makes you feel like you were born to be a detective. Everything about this game is perfectly unique, and I cannot recommend this game enough. Well, obviously Smash Bros is on this list. I think I can move on now. Before this game launched, I have to admit that I wasn't exactly excited for it, but it's been a good few years since I've enjoyed a Pokemon game the way that I enjoyed Pokemon Let's Go. So there isn't a lot to say about this game. It's a Pokemon game. We've all played at least one, probably. You travel through the land of Kanto, catching creatures and battling trainers with the goal of becoming the best like no one ever was. It's a pretty simple structure and Let's Go doesn't really do anything to change that. However, I have to admit the reason that I like this game so much is that it got rid of an awful lot of superfluous features that have been making Pokemon games much more time-consuming than they needed to be since 1998. It's great and streamlined and definitely a good first go at a home console core Pokemon game. I would have preferred it had I had the option not to use the motion controls, and the game lags so badly in places in handheld mode that it did get a little frustrating at times, but none of it really took away from the fact that I loved my time with this game. I loved poking my Pikachu until he made funny faces, I loved revisiting Kanto for the first time in a very long time, and you can ride around on Charizard's back. It's like this game brought all of my childhood dreams to life and I can't sing its praises enough. This game is not going to be for everyone, and I totally understand that, but I just love the bones of this game, and I'm so curious to see what comes next with the Pokemon franchise on the Switch. Moonlighter is my indie darling of the year, and boy oh boy do I adore this game. In Moonlighter, you take on the role of Will, the local shopkeeper who adventures into the nearby dungeons by night in order to find stock for his store. And that's as simple as it is, really. By day you run a shop, trying to decipher the best prices for the treasure you find within the dungeons, and by night you run around randomly generated dungeons, fighting enemies and tetrising as much loot as you can into your backpack. All of this is brought together with the most gorgeous pixel art I've ever seen, fluid animations that will leave you in awe, and a soundtrack that can be both peaceful and full of tension. Honestly speaking, this soundtrack is one of my absolute favourites of all time, and quite easily the best soundtrack I've experienced this year, bar none. This game is something that I love down to the core, and it's just made for someone like me, to be honest. It's like a shinier, better version of Recettear, and I had a lot of fun with Recettear back in the day. Can I explain why I like these games outside of my love of pretending to be a merchant? No, not really, but Moonlighter completely charmed me and it captured me for a good few days before I managed to put it down. And even now I still get the urge to pick it back up and make a few more coins for a few hours because I just think it's fun. I also cannot tell you how thrilled I am that this game is on the Switch because it's given me the perfect opportunity to go back and experience it all over again. Honestly, one of the biggest things to happen to me in terms of gaming this year was finally listening to Bill and Kinross and picking up a copy of Yakuza 0. A week after putting that game into my console for the first time, I had finished 3 Yakuza games and was quietly sobbing as I watched the final cutscenes of Yakuza 6. So it was a big year for Yakuza with 2 full games coming out. The first being the finale to Kiryu's story, Yakuza 6, and the second being Yakuza Kiwami 2, a remake of Yakuza 2 if you can believe it. And both of these games are in my number 1 spot because they're very similar in terms of gameplay and both have things that they do better than the other, so it's difficult to pick between the two if I'm honest. In my opinion, I think the story of 6 is better, and despite having a huge lack of Goro Majima, I think the overall cast is so likeable that I couldn't help but be invested in all of their stories and how they wove together with each other. However, I think a lot of the mini-games and side stuff in Yakuza Kiwami 2 is much better. I may be biased by my love of the Cabaret Club minigame and how that has its own story within it, and I actually made an effort with the Creator Clan feature because it had Majima's personality all over it. So I'm not choosing between these 2 games, but this spot goes to my Yakuza experience as a whole because it's been such a joy to get around to this series. If you are curious though, 0 is absolutely my favourite out of the 4 that I've played so far though. And that's it! That's the whole list of things that I played and enjoyed a lot in 2018. So while I am saying farewell to 2018, I'm super excited to be starting with the 2019 releases. So thank you for watching, I hope that you all had a successful gaming year in 2018, and I hope you all have a fabulous 2019.